You're watching Hidden Coast Surf Online, private surf coaching in Nosara, Costa Rica. For more details, please visit hiddencoastsurf.com.
Hello everybody, welcome to Hidden Coast Online. My name's Ollie Davis and today we're going to be talking about stance. So what is stance and why is it important? Well, probably the most important skill you can learn as a foundation in surfing is your stance. And what I mean by that is standing in the most helpful way you can so that you feel like you have full control of the surfboard, as opposed to standing in a less helpful way where you might go to more of a feeling like you're a passenger sort of stood on a moving object, which is what I think a lot of people who are learning to surf can kind of relate to. Like the board is moving, it's going along, be it in white water or going down the line of a green wave. You're standing on this moving thing, but you're not necessarily in control of it, okay? So one of the core, sort of cornerstone foundational skills we teach in surfing is stance, and standing, like I said, in the most helpful way you can so that you're able to feel like you have that surfboard under your control. And so if you think about it, there's any number of ways you can stand on a surfboard, okay? And standing in a way that is unhelpful simply means that your learning curve, your rate of progression will be very, very slow. So how do we stand in the correct stance? And that's literally what we're going to be talking about in today's video. We're going to divide the stance and how to stand into 4 subsections, okay? We start with feet, hips, hands, and then head. So we're going to start off talking about the feet, okay? Of all the 4 things that we're going to talk about today, the feet, the hips, the hands, the head, I would say arguably the feet are the most important component of the stance. I often say that it doesn't matter how good a person's stance is, if your feet are not in the correct position on the surfboard, you're going to struggle massively to feel like you're in control of the board and furthermore to balance on the surfboard in the first place. So we're going to talk about feet today. Before we do, I'm just going to point out what I've drawn here. Basically I've got, in fairly simple terms, you've got like a long board here and then a shorter board here, okay? And on any surfboard, we have these lines that are common to all boards, all right? So if we take the long board here, we've got the stringer line, what we call the stringer line here, going down the center of the board. And then here we've got the stringer line going down the center of the short board as well. Some boards literally actually have the line going down the middle, some boards don't, okay? It's kind of useful when you do have a stringer line because you have some point of reference as to where the center of the board is. And then the other line here, the dotted line, I put it in dotted because it's kind of like an imaginary line. It's typically not shown on a surfboard, but if you imagine you pick up a surfboard, it's roughly in the middle, like lengthwise in the middle of it, and you pick it up and it's neither heavy at the front nor back, it balances in the middle. That's your midpoint line there, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to refer back to these lines while we're talking about feet and where they need to be on the surfboard. So it's pretty simple, okay? We're going to start off with our front foot being the most important thing, and something that is commonly overlooked in surfing is having your foot simply from a left and right perspective, having your foot in the middle of the board, okay? So a nice way to think about it is having as much toe on one side of the board as you have heel on the other side. A very, very common problem is that people will pop up to their feet with their feet off center, kind of like that, okay? That's going to make it very, very difficult, and it makes the board behave in very unpredictable ways. So what we want to do as a matter of priority is make sure that at least our front foot needs to be right in the center of the surfboard, all right? And then the back foot back here, same with the short board, we'll put our back foot here and our front foot here, okay? In terms of the width, the spacing between front and back foot, as a general rule of thumb, we want to be about a shoulder width or a shoulder width and a half apart, okay? So next up, we're going to be talking about the hips, okay? So what I'm going to do right now, rather crudely, is draw the side profile, a bit of a wobbly line there, but the side profile of the surfboard, and we're going to put in this imaginary line that we saw in the feet, which is kind of like the midpoint of the board, okay? A little bit longer back there. midpoint of the board, okay, is right here. And you'd be forgiven for thinking, and many beginner surfers will also apply this logic that, you know, if we're going to stand on a surfboard, we want it to be flat in the water, and so therefore you put, you know, maybe your front foot goes this side of the line, your back foot goes that side of the line, and you kind of straddle this midpoint here, and to an extent that works. You know, as you move through the water, you're going to have a board that's nice and flat in the water. It's not going to nosedive, and it's not going to drag with the tail sort of sat down in the water either. And that is, you know, from a surfboard point of view, that's what we want. We want the board to be nice and flat in the water. However, there is a better way of standing, and I'm going to draw just a slightly smaller board underneath here with the midpoint there, and we are going to bring the whole body further back and then put that foot there, okay? So that, like we said on the feet part of the video, we've got our front foot just ahead of the midpoint line and our back foot a shoulder width and a half further back. But you see, we're not standing like this, we're standing further back on the board, but we're going to push, and I don't know how to draw that, but we're going to push our hips forward. This is the bit I don't quite know how to draw with a stick man, but you'll see in the example video, we're going to push our hips forward over, so it brings our centre of gravity over the top of our front foot. And the distinction here is we don't want our head over the top of our front foot, we want to push our hip forward over the front foot. And then, you know, while you're watching this video, you can stand up and try this, then I can move my weight back and move my hips back as well over to my back foot, okay? So you can transfer weight from the front foot to the back foot, and the head remains relatively still in the center of your feet. And that's basically it. What that allows you to do, and what you want to think about here, is we've got an accelerator button here, because our front pressure on our front foot will mean that the board is flat in the water and the board moves quickly. Pressure on the back foot is going to be like a brake, okay, or a stall button. And it means that the board is going to slow down. And we're going to talk about accelerator and brake in the next video, video number 2, which is going to be about board control, okay? But for now, just think about having your foot just ahead of the midpoint of the line, hips pushed forward, and that allows you then to bring your hips back to press the brake, press the accelerator, etc. So next up, we're going to be talking about hands, okay? Where do we put our hands while we're standing on a surfboard? And we're going to use mostly examples, video examples of this one, rather than using the board. So what we want to do, and the best way to think about this, is you want to have your hands hovering over the rails from where they came from before you popped up, if that makes sense, okay? So your right hand is over the right rail and your left hand is over the left rail. Sort of like, and you'll see in the video example here, a little bit like sitting side saddle and holding a set of bicycle handlebars that you are pointing in the direction that you want to go. Okay, so if we're in the white water, we're pointing those handlebars towards the beach. And that lends itself really nicely then to subsequent videos where we're going to be talking about turning. And you can sort of start to use this handlebar analogy a little bit to start thinking about turning the surfboard. But for now, we want our hands to be over the rails, one on the right side and one on the left side, okay? And then lastly, head. Head is really easy, but again, really, really important. So a lot of these tips and these hints are very, very simple things to actually execute, but they carry a lot of weight and importance, okay? So a very common thing in surfing is with our head, we'll be looking down at the board. Everyone finds the nose of their surfboard, or maybe their front foot, the most interesting thing in the whole wide world, okay? What we want to do is lift that head up, look where we're going, or in the event of us wanting to change direction and turn the surfboard, we're going to be looking where we want to go. Where you look becomes extremely important when you're thinking about controlling a surfboard. But now, by default, what we want to do is be looking up in the direction that we're going, not down at the nose of the board and not down at the feet. Okay. And so that brings us to the end of stance, okay? And so the thing to remember is once you have a good stance, i.e. you're standing in the most helpful way you can on a surfboard, it's going to allow you to exercise control over that surfboard in a way that you'll feel confident, okay? When we have a poor stance, your confidence drops because the board will tend to be unpredictable under your feet. So when you have a good stance and it's consistent, and that is a very, very key word here, when your stance is consistent and always correct, it starts to garner confidence at the surfboard being predictable under your feet, and allows you to start then to exercise control over the board so that you can be its master. You can control the surfboard and send it in the direction that you want to go. And that brings us to video number 2, where we're going to be talking about board controls, how to control a surfboard using the stance.